introduce to you Dr. Jaime Leal, a Mexican Canadian who is of great interest. And there's something that Jaime never shares, but I hope you don't mind me sharing. But Jaime is a whiz at negotiation, mediation, a humanist, and has won many awards for humanitarian needs. But I think the thing that inspires me about Jaime is, and he doesn't mention this a great deal, but Jaime negotiated his own release when he was kidnapped in Mexico. And so that is a man to be reckoned with that can do that. And so let me just tell you a little bit more about Dr. Jaime Leal. Dr. Jaime Leal is a positive psychologist and undertook a PhD in psychology, and has developed the emotional paycheck, which looks at the well-being and how to maintain your workforce. He is an instructor in emerging leadership. He is a facilitator and debriefer of dialogue in the dark Hamburg. And I need to know more about that sometime, Jaime, but maybe over a coffee. And he is the leader and community leader of Mind Sonar, and has developed the online education for Mind Sonar, and delivers Mind Sonar across North America and South America. He's also a TEDx speaker, TV host, and has been working for over 20 years delivering workshops and lectures. So without further ado, Dr. Jaime Leal, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the introduction. Thank you, Ian. Yes, so we will talk about conflict and cognitive diversity. And we know that when, just like Jab was explaining in the first presentation, when we have people thinking differently, conflict is inevitable. Right, is going to be there. So the better we understand conflict and the better we deal with this, we're going to be able to build better teams and take them further, reaching our goals. So first, let's explore a little bit of definitions, right? What is conflict and conflict escalation? We usually talk about conflict escalation and de-escalating conflict and difficult conversations and difficult customers and in solving conflict. But conflict escalation is a process by which conflicts, of course, grow in severity over time. You know, when you try to just sweep things under the carpet and then later on you discover that they don't really disappear, they're just problems and they keep growing and growing. That's conflict escalation, usually because you just procrastinate in addressing the issue. But conflict is a serious disagreement or argument, typically, something that keeps growing and growing and growing, and that becomes like the new norm. There are some conflicts that have been going on for a while now in society and in corporations and in general, like the battle of sexes and in people thinking differently or specifically having some bias on some cultures and so on and so on. But what is a disagreement? So if we cannot solve, if we don't want to get to the point where we have conflict escalation, then we can go back and deal with conflict. But what if, we don't want conflict. We want to prevent conflict, understand it better, then we have to address disagreements before they can turn into conflict. But what is a disagreement? Well, a disagreement is just a lack of consensus or approval. So if I don't get the approval that I'm looking for, if we don't get to the point, if we don't have some feeling of democracy and I don't feel that I'm having a say on what is being decided in the company, then I have some sense of disagreement. But the approval that we're talking about in order to get, when we don't get the approval, we have this disagreement. The approval is the belief that someone or something is good or acceptable. So when I approve something, I believe that, that is something good. So belief comes to mind before conflict escalation. But what is that belief? A belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. And probably most of you already know this, right? But I like to take this set of definitions to understand that basically all conflict escalation begins with a belief. something I believe about you, something I believe about business, something I believe about culture and bias that we have in men or women or diversity or war or peace or governments or political parties, you name it. Regardless of what you're thinking about right now, there are some beliefs involved. So those beliefs play a role because they, even though they are invisible, they project themselves in this process. So we have a belief that is like, let's say, faith or conviction or understanding that something is true. And one good way to identify a belief in coaching sessions is when the customer or the coachee says, no, that is not something I believe in. That is a true, right? So when the customer or the coachee actually mentions that this is the true, you're referring to a belief. You don't tell them usually, right? But you challenge that as a belief because there nothing is like necessarily true. All generalizations are false, including this one, right? So belief then evolves into values. So values are a set or the sum of beliefs that they come together, and then you start seeing beliefs like honesty, values, like honesty. Okay, so hold on. Like honesty, for instance, so which is gathering different beliefs that build honesty as a value. Then that value is going to be reflected in an attitude, like the sum of values, beliefs, and the mindset. And here we're touching directly on mind sonar and what it measures. Those attitudes are there. And I will behave on a certain way. So from the belief, we start growing into values, and then those values turn into attitudes, and those attitudes give us behaviors. The behaviors is the only part of this that we see, right? Normally we deal with behaviors, but we're actually dealing with the result of a belief. So if we want to de-escalate conflict, to understand it better, to have cognitive diversity where conflict is going to be common and approach it with a different perspective, we have to understand it better and understand that everything comes from a belief. And understanding these beliefs and values is actually just measuring and understanding thinking patterns and Graves categories, which is two of the parts of the mind sonar system. So that being said, conflict derives from having different beliefs. So I do have a different belief, therefore later on I will face conflict. With that in mind, we would say that if we are able to deal with beliefs in a good way, we will prevent conflict, or we would have the healthy conflict, which is always good to have some kind of conflict. I think differently, this is my idea, I do not agree with that. As long as it is respectful and time bound and continues to add to the final project, we are fine with that type of conflict. But we don't want the conflict that is escalating to the point of violence. Different beliefs will create conflict. Now, you would say, well, I don't want to deal with conflict. Then I don't want different diverse teams. It's too much of a hassle, right? Having people who think differently creates conflict. I don't want conflict, so I will look for people who think the same, think alike, and, similarity attraction, just like Jab mentioned, and then I'm going to live happily ever after. Well, guess what? Maybe when you're answering something quickly, if you want to move faster, yes, those groups that are similar, homogeneous, then they're going to move faster. But some groups that are diverse, then they are going to move better. And that's what you want. And studies show, like McKinsey, shows that the companies that actually have executive boards that are diverse reach better results. They produce more money. They give you better return of investment, right? And usually we are understanding that this diversity, it is based, of course, in foreign nationals, like cultural diversity, and women including gender equality in the working environment. So with that in mind, we can say, like, if you want to have better results, then you have to deal with conflict and you have to build a diverse team. Now, Diverse group also uncover more angles. So nowadays that you have to reinvent your business, that you have to start doing things differently, and the studies show that diverse teams have a different perspective on problems and challenges, and face different face the same situation in a different way, finding different solutions. So if you want to have the opportunity to face these VUCA environments that are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous in a better way, faster, with better solutions, then you have to look for diverse teams. Cognitive diverse teams, just like Jab mentioned before. It's not only about hiring people from different countries, because then some people from different countries may think alike, while you have people from the same country who are thinking differently. Actually, there's been some trends nowadays, as you probably are aware of the fact that the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, he hired exactly 50% of his cabinet was women and 50% were men. And whether one part of the population was really happy with that because of gender equality, some analytics of these analysts of these topics started to wonder, like, how possible is it that the most qualified person for a job is actually 50% men and 50% women? So is it that you're hiring really a diverse group to reach success, or you are hiring just because you want to send a message, right? Which will jeopardize the result and the performance of the team itself. So that's the kind of situations, right, that we can fall into because we want to build diverse groups, but the wrong way. Just because I want to have more women, I do have a man that is qualified for the job, but I cannot hire him because I have to have more women. Is that fair for the company? What if we start looking at cognitive diversity instead of cultural diversity, right? So that's a different approach. Diverse teams also generate, they have more credit, right? Like they get better papers. This is the Scientific American that studied 1.5 million academic papers. So 1.5 million. And they found that papers written by diverse groups receive more citations. But of course, here's the other side of the equation. Homogeneous groups produce more papers. Why? Because we can learn that if you want to move faster, you can find people who think alike. But if you want to move better, then you need to find a more cognitive diverse team. Does that make sense? So we're looking at this let me just change the spotlight, because somebody's asking here to have the video on the spotlight. So if you can do that, please, Ian, you can do that. Just put my video on the spotlight. So what we can do here is that if we want to perform better, we need to have cognitive diverse groups. So this is a different approach on diversity. And it is something that we're going to be hearing more and more. It's not about looking different on the outside, but thinking different. That's what makes a difference. But in the past, since we couldn't measure cognitive diversity, we were not able to really, select the people that think differently according to what we want to build as a team. But nowadays, we can do it with Mind Sonar. So now let's continue to move forward in this presentation. So cognitive diversity refers to including individuals with a unique, diverse viewpoints who use cognitive exploration modes when solving problems in the workplace. So it's about thinking. It's not about looks. It's not about hiring people who are African American or who are Muslim or who are white and Nordic or Hispanic or Latino or indigenous population. No, what you want to build as a team is people who think differently. And that's the key. Why? Because remember, beliefs build values, values build attitudes, attitudes lead to behaviors, and those behaviors are going to be based on what you believe in. So measuring and understanding beliefs with a tool like MindSonar through meta programs and thinking patterns, which is basically identifying one belief. And I will give you one example of this. The biggest challenge in building cognitive diverse teams is that we can't see beliefs, right? Until now. Right now, we can see beliefs through the use of a tool like MindSonar. Let me show you an example. So let's say that we have someone trying results, but they don't get the results they want. Well, you try a different thing, right? So I'm trying to bring success to my company. I don't get the success I want. Then I try a different thing. Most of the time, we solve issues like that. But if it doesn't work, then those actions keep coming back. The actions that we don't want keep coming back. And it is because they are being triggered by feelings and emotions that we have. We do have a feeling. That feeling is reflected on an action that gives us some results. But feelings are not something that we can switch on and off just like that. A feeling is a response from something, once again, we believe. Mindset generates feelings. Feelings gives us actions, and actions lead to results. So if we really want to create different results, what we need to do is to challenge our beliefs. Different beliefs will lead to different results. And I promise an example, but just want to make a quick note. MindSonar works here. MindSonar measures mindset, which is some of the beliefs that I will show in a minute, in a specific context. So what you can do is understand how you think, how the people around you think, how your team think in a specific context. So with that in mind, let me give you one example. So let's suppose that someone has a belief deeply engraved in their mind, and probably this is you, and the belief that this is urgent. Something is urgent. There's a task is urgent, time is of the essence, sense of urgency. I will never get this opportunity again. There's not a second chance. So all these beliefs are somehow learned, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of the passport you have. This belief could be there. Now, if you have that belief, that person would start feeling anxious, uneasy, willing to do things quickly because time is of the essence, remember? Right? And that will lead to a specific action, like making quick decisions. We call that proactive. That's a proactive thinking pattern that Jap was mentioning in the first conference. So that proactive person we can understand and measure the proactive thinking pattern. But what lies underneath, it's a belief. The belief that something is urgent. Is that really urgent or not? Depending on the circumstance. You can challenge that belief, change it, adapt it, use it to your advantage, right? Now let's see another example. In the same company, you can have another person that believes that everything should be thought through. Making quick decisions leads to problems. I have had many problems in the past. I don't want to go through that. I want to take my time. I move my hands like this. Slow down, please. You're going too fast. Then that person is going to be feeling pensive, right? Excuse the typo there. So it's going to be, thinking about things. I don't want to take action. My action actually is going to be to think about things. Have you ever met someone like that? In a team, probably you have met someone who is, thinking about things too much, taking some time. We call it reactive. So with those different thinking styles, you can already see some conflict. And this is why I showed you this. The proactive person may think of the reactive person that, that person is doing nothing. It's not doing much. It's not moving fast. It's holding me back. It's slowing me down. It's a burden for the team. So this person over here may have all these negative thoughts about this person, while the reactive thinking pattern will think negatively also of the proactive person, thinking like, well, this guy's crazy, right? It's a loose gun. It's just too fast, right? This is going to backfire anytime. So with this in mind, this proactive, reactive are not going to like each other. And this is where conflict arises. So conflict Remember that what that we talked about is having a different belief. What is the belief you have? If that is invisible, now with Mind Sonar, you can see the beliefs in people. You can foresee conflict. You can actually prepare your team to face the conflict you want them to have in the benefit of the goal of the community, the group, the team, the company. So what you want is to you want have different views, different points of view, people challenging each other, but in a friendly way, in a respectful manner, so they can work in a good environment, moving forward towards the goals of the company. So with that in mind, you would say, like, you know what, you're not a loose gun. You're just being proactive. And this is basic. This is important. This difference, it is, as Jap mentioned before, I'm certified as a negotiator with the Harvard methodology by the MIT Institute of Massachusetts. So in this institute, the most basic, the Harvard methodology in a nutshell says, separate the problem from the person. Be hard on the problem, be soft on the person. If you want to solve conflict, the first thing that you have to do is separate the problem from the person. It's not a stupid person, but he's doing stupid things. That's a different approach. If I approach a stupid person, that person is going to be stupid forever. Just like the personality spectrum that Jap mentioned before, right? It's like, that person is going to be stupid forever. But if that person does a stupid thing, I can talk to that person so that doesn't happen again. So you're not a loose gun. Yes, you're not getting us in trouble. You're just being proactive. Is that good? Is that bad? Do we need you to change that? That's a different story, and you can approach that. Now, the proactive person is going to think of the reactive person. You know what? You're not stalling. You're not holding those back. You're not slowing down the team. You're being reactive. Is that good? Can we use it to our advantage? I separated the problem from the person so I can be hard on the problem, soft on the person. Can you see the difference here? Conflict from a different approach, cognitive diversity, understanding that we think differently, and that's okay. We can separate the thinking patterns from the person so we can address his thinking patterns that can change. They also change all the time depending on the context, and we can use them to our advantage. And just like that, we measured 13. In Mind Sonar, we have to separate the problem from the person so we can be hard on the problem and soft on the person, just like I mentioned before. And just like that, for the benefit of time, I'm going to go quickly on another two examples. If I believe that how I feel about my work is more important, so what really matters is how I feel. You know, I'm the best judge of myself and my work. You know, I according to what I feel inside is how I do outside. If I think that, if I believe that, if I truly believe that, then my feelings are going to be more of self-critic. And my actions is I listen to my own opinion. We call it internally referenced. Some people may call them stubborn. We call them internally referenced, right? Is that useful? Yes, in some positions that's very useful, especially when there's no feedback. You don't want a police officer who is externally referenced, right? Is it okay if I, arrest you? You don't want the police officer asking that. You want a police officer who is more internally referenced, right? If a judge, a quality control manager, an auditor, a tax accountant, you want them to be internally referenced. This is what you're supposed to do. This is the law, right? No rule bending here. But there is another side of the spectrum, which is the externally referenced. If I believe that the other people's perception is more important, so I am who the people tell me I am, right? So if the people talk about me, that's good, and I want to hear from them. That's the feeling. I listen to other people's opinion, and I look for feedback. We call them external reference. So now, once again, if you have in the same team, let's suppose this is your boss, and it's internally referenced, that person is not going to be motivating other people by giving them feedback. Why? Because they don't think it's important. They listen to their own opinion. Why would they bother motivating other people if they don't think that's important? Until they take Mind Sonar and they understand that I'm internally referenced, but that does not mean that other people may not be triggered and motivated in a different way. So other people are externally referenced. So long story short, you're not stubborn. You're just internally referenced. And that's it. That's very useful sometimes. Can we use it to the team's advantage? Can we have some benefit from it? Is it time that you change that? Those are different conversations. Separate the problem from the person. Cognitive diversity at its best. Now, you are not attention needy, right? You are externally referenced. What you want is to look for feedback and look for other people's opinion, and that's important. Is that useful for the team? Probably yes, at some point. Is it useful for you? Probably yes and probably not, depending on the context. And that is why Mind Sonar is so powerful. One last example. If I believe that there's always a positive side, there's always something good to take away, if I truly believe that, I went to all the positive psychology training, I do mindfulness in the morning, I meditate, and I always find what's positive. If life gives me lemons, I make a lemonade. If that is what you believe in, then probably you'll feel optimist, right? And you're going to look for what's right. We call them matching. Now, the opposite side would be someone who believes there's always a catch, a mistake, something that you need to find. And that feeling is like, you know what? I feel analytic. And they're going to look for what's wrong. And you can already see the problem here. So the conflict will arise from the fact of having beliefs. So one person in there is going to say, like, you're not too romantic. You're just matching, right? Which can be very beneficial. Let me close the window here because there's some construction going on. So you're not romantic, you're just matching, which can be very beneficial for the team at some point. You're not pessimist, you're just mismatching, which also can add to the team. Once again, you separate the problem from the person. You're hard on the problem, soft on the person. Changing the way we define things changes the way we deal with them. Right? So, understanding how you think, understanding how you motivate yourself, but moreover, understanding how your team thinks is the first step towards building cognitive diverse groups that see conflict from a different perspective. We can do all that through Mind Sonar that helps you understand your beliefs through thinking patterns, your values through criteria, engraved drives, and then those lead to specific examples of attitudes and behaviors that you face every day. So build, nurture, and grow cognitive diversity while reducing conflict with Mind Sonar. I love this approach because it allows me to go beyond the skin, beyond the culture, beyond the accent. I'm able to work in different countries with people from different cultural backgrounds. Right? And different socioeconomic backgrounds, which is also another similarity attraction that we have, right? Usually people with a similar income, they get together. Well, when it comes to cognitive diversity, you can step away from all of that and start thinking on what's really important, which is the way we think, the way we motivate ourselves, and the way we face conflict. So once again, thank you very much. Here's my email, in case you have any other comments or questions, but I'm open for some Q&A right now.
MySonar es una herramienta psicológica basada 100% en Internet, creada por el Dr. Jack Hollander, respaldada por el Instituto de Psicología Ecléctica de Holanda y utilizada mundialmente por profesionales de recursos humanos, reclutadores y coaches, tanto a nivel individual como corporativo. Si deseas saber más sobre MySonar, te invitamos a visitar www.mysonar.ca.